Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. It is April 18th, and that means that it's been a long time since I've done anything. Almost 2.5 weeks. So, my hands are a little shaky, and I'm not as steady as I should be, but hopefully I'll get this silver soldered. With the fixturing done, it's time to heat this thing up and put some silver solder on it. Before I can do that, I had to mix up the flux because I only use this about every couple years, and the flux dries out. Probably should put the whole thing in a baggie because the top is not watertight. Now the flux is normally put on with a brush, not the handle of the brush, normally put on with the brush itself. But I have flux on the handle of the brush from stirring it, so I'm going to do that. When in doubt, improvise. Now this one I can put a lot of silver solder on. I can just solder that right up. But I don't want to get this silver solder down into that plate. So I'm going to try and keep the silver solder just out here on the front edge. I just want to tack it so that when I take this plate off, it'll hold together while I silver solder the other end of the crack, and then I can go along and do the whole thing. At least that's the plan. I also want to keep the silver solder away from the clamp itself here. I want to get this silver soldered, get that silver soldered, get a little silver solder here at the bottom. On the back side of that clamp, right there. Okay, we got the flux on there. Now we'll wipe off the flux brush. And get our torch ready. I like using this kind of face shield. I don't need the protection of my face from the flame. You can use goggles, but because of these glasses, goggles tend to make them fog up. So I like using the face shield. This is a number 5 tint. Gives me plenty of visibility through the lens, and it blocks the UV and keeps it from burning my eyes. So we'll get the torch around here and let's get started. Make sure I got enough hose and I can reach what I want to reach. I'm going to preheat the whole casting. I don't want to put a localized red hot spot without at least bringing the rest of it up to a good warm temperature. It's about 50 degrees out here in the garage, which is enough for me to be out here working in just a shirt, but it's a little cold to be racking one little part of this thing up to red hot and the rest of it not. I've set the torch to about 7 psi of set the regulators on the torch to about 7 psi of acetylene and 15 psi of oxygen. Okay, the tacks are in place. I have to put some more silver solder over there. I didn't quite get it ran over to where I want it. Now if I've done this right, when I take this clamp loose, everything's going to stay in position. Great. I only have just a tiny bit of silver solder on this, but it's holding in position. I want to go ahead and put silver solder on this back section here and get that all stuck together so that it's going to stay where I want it. There we go. I want it to flow out and make a nice little puddle there. Looking good. This stuff costs an arm and a leg. A couple ounces is 40 bucks. At least last time I bought it. Okay, I'm going to let that cool a little bit, and then we'll take it off this table and silver solder the top of it. After taking the table off, I could see that the casting had never been flat. It didn't bother when I was just bolting the table on, but now that I'm seeing it broken, I realize that the table not being flat on the casting put a strain on the casting itself. So when the table hit the floor, which was the largest part, and hit the floor first, it put a disproportionate load on the two sections of the blade guide. So I decided to grind off the top of the blade guide so it was flat, realizing that that would thin down a lot of the casting to an unacceptable level. I decided to take some brazing rod and build up pads on the low spots of the casting so that when I ground it, I could just grind off a little bit of the casting and leave the pads there as a point for the table to rest on and square up. That'll make that connection a lot stronger. The table will add strength to the blade guide and it will sit flat. Brazing rod is a lot less expensive than silver solder, so since I'm just going to be putting on something to take part of it off, decided to go with a less expensive brazing rod. That squared that up pretty good. Now I can take the belt sander and grind off those brazed bumps on there and make that top surface sit level. One more little bit right up here in this corner. Beautiful. Shut off the torch. Pick this thing up and let it sit on top of the jaws so it's not under any load while it's cooling. Well, after a month's delay, well, half a month, probably closer to a full month by the time I get the video edited. This is all stuck back together. Now I could make a new one. You know, cut out a plate of steel and drill it and weld on tabs and machine the thing up and possibly make it better than what it is. But I think this is going to work, and having it work is more important than having spent hours and hours of additional time making a new one. Because this is like 20 minutes work doing the silver soldering. There's a lot of setup and things, but most of it was just waiting until I could get out here and do it without coughing my lungs out. Feels great being out here in the shop again. This is the longest beard I've had in 20 years. But I decided I wasn't going to shave until I got to feeling better. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching. This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union, without the express written permission of the parents or legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.